The South Pacific is turning into a new competition ground, with the U.S. and its allies trying to boost their presence to match China's growing influence in the region. And that rivalry has become fiercer since last month, when Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang went on a 10-day tour of the region, visiting 8 countries, including the Solomon Islands, Fiji and Tonga. As Wang was busy landing a slate of agreements, the U.S. was trying to rally support against China on the other side of the Pacific. Just as Axios writes, all of a sudden, a region with fewer than 700,000 inhabitants became ground zero for U.S.-China competition. So, what exactly is China offering, and why is the U.S. so intimidated? This March, China announced a security pact with the Solomon Islands, an agreement that has raised concerns among the U.S. and its allies, especially Australia, about a possible Chinese foothold. Senior White House official Kurt Campbell immediately rushed to the Solomon Islands and warned that Washington had significant concerns and would respond accordingly to any steps aimed at establishing a permanent Chinese military presence there. Former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison also dispatched a senior diplomat and described the pending deal as a great concern. Despite a flurry of warnings, Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare said the deal is not about what the West is concerned about.
It's not about establishing military base or a permanent presence of Chinese forces on the ground. It's not about that. It's about addressing the security needs, like when times of disaster. We will need the support of all our developing partners, including China. If there's a riot here and we cannot handle it locally, we will need all our friends to come on board to help us.
When riots broke out in the country's capital in 2021, Australia only managed to send 100 police officers and soldiers, and 50 peacekeepers were dispatched by Papua New Guinea. Of course, they need more help than that. Beijing's interest in the Pacific became clearer by a series of agreements signed after the second China-Pacific Foreign Ministers meeting, chaired by Wang Yi. After the meeting, Wang announced that China will build new platforms of cooperation with the Pacific Island countries to help them tackle climate change and poverty, foster development, and improve disaster prevention and mitigation. Wang said some question China's intentions in the Pacific, but Beijing is also supporting developing countries in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. He also stressed that Pacific nations are sovereign and independent states are not anyone's backyard. By comparison, the U.S. footprint in the Pacific has faded away since World War II. There was no U.S. embassy in the Solomon Islands, for example, for almost 30 years until earlier this year. They also contributed only $10 million in development fund to the whole region in 2020. Like one scholar said, "I'm always shocked that in Washington they think they have a significant presence in the Pacific when they just don't." After the tsunami in Tonga, U.S. and its allies such as Australia and New Zealand did offer humanitarian aid, but it was not even close to what China has offered. Thousands of scholarships were provided by China for vocational, diplomatic, and disaster response training. It also offered assistance in meteorological observation. It seems like what China is offering will help Pacific nations address some of their very urgent concerns, like climate change and economic recovery after COVID. So, to counter China's efforts, the United States will have to increase its engagement with the region and offer deals that directly benefit the people of these countries and brings them development, prosperity, and security.